This is the pre-lab video for the sand-salt mixture lab. I have the materials that you need listed here on the paper, and in this lab we are going to do 3 different separation techniques: dissolving, filtering, and evaporating. Before you get into class on the day we are doing the lab, make sure you have how it works, these boxes filled out for each of these 3 separation techniques. And what we're going to do is follow the procedure on the next page, and it's going to tell you the procedure for each of those steps: dissolving, filtering, and evaporating. You are going to get a sand and salt mixture. The first thing you want to do is get a weigh boat and put that on the balance and hit the 0 button. Some of your balances might say tare instead. It's the same thing. It's reading 0 now. Dump the sand and salt mixture into it, and you want to write this mass down on the data table on the next page where it says mass of original sand and salt sample. We're going to need that because we want to figure out the percent salt in the original sample at the end. So once you have that mass written down, you can fold this weigh boat to make it a little easier to pour, and just put that back into that original test tube. Once that's in that original test tube, the directions tell you to measure 10 milliliters of water into a graduated cylinder. So what works pretty well is if you just add some water into a beaker and then pour from the beaker into the graduated cylinder. And if you need to, you can use an eyedropper if you only have to add a couple drops to get it right up to that 10 milliliters. Once you have that in there, you are going to pour it into this sand and salt mixture, and then you are going to stir it with a glass stirring rod. All right, you let that sit for a minute, and we are now going to filter this out. Now remember, when you are doing these procedures, you want to make meaningful observations, at least 2 meaningful observations for each of these steps. And make these observations while you're doing that procedure. Don't wait until the end and try and remember what you did. Make those observations while you're going along. So right now what you would normally have is the sand and salt and water mixed in there, and we are going to filter that. So what you need is filter paper, and what you have to do is fold this in half, like that, and then fold it in half again. All right, so right now this is what you have. And what you want to do is separate out one of these 4 folds there. So you end up with that. And you put that into the funnel, and you will just wet that so it holds the paper in place. Just take the squirt bottle and add some water to it, and the water will drip through, and that's okay. You have to use the pipe stem triangle to support the funnel. Now, I added a lot of water in there, and I don't want to wait for it to all drip, so I can actually pour the excess out. Now what I'm going to do is take an evaporating dish, but I want to get the mass of the empty evaporating dish. So I zero the balance again, and I put the evaporating dish on. So this is 41.45 grams. That's what I write for a massive empty evaporating dish. I can now put that underneath the funnel with the filter paper, and I'm going to lower this down so it doesn't splash. So now what you do is you take this test tube that would have the sand and salt mixture and the water, and you pour it into the funnel. The residue, which will be the sand in this case, is going to stay in the filter paper, and the liquid will drip through into the evaporating dish. Once that is done dripping, I would raise this up, take the funnel out of the way. You can just put it into a beaker so it doesn't roll all over the place. And we are now going to heat this mixture, that would be salt water, over a Bunsen burner. So we are going to replace the pipe stem triangle with the wire gauze. We want to cover the evaporating dish with the watch glass because the water is going to boil at some point. We don't want that splashing out and hitting anybody. And then you're going to put a Bunsen burner underneath. Height-wise, this is probably pretty good. You don't want it too high. You don't want it like way up here like this. The stuff is never going to dry out in time. So just put it a couple inches above the Bunsen burner, something like that's probably pretty good. and you're going to turn on the Bunsen burner and you're going to heat this until it dries. There's going to only be a couple milliliters of water in here. It's not going to take long to dry. Once it's dry and it's cool enough to handle, you can remove the watch glass, put this back on the balance, and you're going to record this of mass and evaporating dish and salt after heating. And then you'd be able to follow the math here to calculate the percent salt in the original sample. So at that point you did dissolving, filtering, and evaporating. Remember to make meaningful observations as you go through each of those separation techniques, and then you should be able to answer the questions at the bottom. Alright, that's it.